All right. See you once we get there. Okay. See as we're on, let's record this bad boy. Let's make sure we're up. All right. Hold on one second. I think we're going to be up. Let's just check it. There we go. We're up. All right. And everything's turbines to speed. Let's go forward. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Whiskey Wednesday. We got a special treat for all of you guys tonight. Of course, Shane Armstrong is here. He is the master blender for Westland. So we're very excited to have him here tonight. We're not so excited about having my other guest, which is Jason Cousins, who is the guy in Massachusetts and all of New England. Actually, you're all over the country now.
East Coast.
East Coast. Really? Is there still a rivalry between East Coast, West Coast that you have to deal with? All right, good. I didn't want you going down, my friend. He's here tonight too to help us fill in the gaps. But without further ado, let's try to drink some whiskey, anyways. So thanks for everybody for showing up tonight. I know it was tough to come here to drink whiskey tonight, so I get it. All right.
Yeah,
Shane, welcome.
Labor.
Thank you very, very much for coming tonight. We're very appreciative. You are basically a Massachusetts boy, though.
Yeah, born and raised.
Yeah. Then he went out to the West Coast and just ruined everything.
What are you gonna do? Someone had to make whiskey.
There you go. So how long have you been out there working at Westland?
I was working at Westland in 2012.
Really?
So you've been pretty early on.
Long,
yeah. So it was kind of founded in 2010.
Yeah.
First started distilling 2011. I came on in 2012. Prominent moment, obviously.
That's right. That's when everything turned around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I've been there really early on. From we had a really small facility. Up till
so you've
now.
seen some big changes.
Yeah, for sure.
Over the time.
Yeah, we had the acquisition in 2017.
Yeah.
By Remy Cointreau, which is really nice because obviously they own Brooklotti. So it's good to have a sister distillery, bounce things off of, and got to go there. That was a big advantage.
That's very, very nice. Let me ask you a question. When you went, because now you got my curiosity peaked. When you went there, did you pick up anything that was almost like something you could like directly sort of use back at the distillery?
I don't think it was super direct. I mean, the best thing was to see that they had the same problems. I think it was a little bit of a
Misery
relief.
loves
it was
company.
A little bit of a relief, and I was like, okay,
I'm not the only one.
Okay, we're dialed in a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, here and there, like understanding their approach is a good takeaway. I mean, they're doing a similar thing. They're trying to express the place that they are, and we're trying to express where we are. So like, there's a through line.
I think that is sort of one of the. I think that is one of the things that sort of like, with sort of the acquisition, that was sort of like a natural fit, as like both distilleries are sort of all about place, and what's in the area, and keeping everything hyper local, and sort of seeing what you can do within a confined area to try to make the whiskey itself has a direct connection to the community.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about exactly where their barley comes from, down to the fields. Like, there's a lot of barley that grows in Washington. We have some that are, variety specific from this field, from this farmer. Right. So there's a lot to like compare between the two. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that's really great.
Yeah, and I was a fan of Brooklotti before even like the acquisition. It was
How can you not
this was
be,
sort
though?
of a model
of
what a distillery could be.
Well, we've been through, we've been early supporters of Westland for when we actually start getting it here in Massachusetts, and we've seen all the changes going through. But enough about us, and we'll talk about the different expressions as we go along. Let's start off because we're going to do the flagship first.
Yeah, let's dial it in. It makes sense.
Okay, all right. So the first one is the flagship. Now this has changed over the years. What was considered sort of the flagship. Now, this one is actually if you go back, it's sort of a culmination of the two types, the pairing, or three types of the pairing, all brought together to make one cohesive product.
Yeah, so we originally had our core range. We had American Oak, peated Cherrywood. American Oak was what we call our 5-malt grain bill, which uses some roasted and kilned malts, which is somewhat unique in the single malt world. Glenmorangie, so you have a lot of bottles of Glenmorangie Signet.
Yep.
That's an example of one that uses roasted malts. So we take that and that ages in New American Oak casks, 2 different types of them. And that was a majority of what made up American Oak. Peated had that component, but also had obviously some peated malt, 49%. This was heavily peated Scottish malt at the time. And then we had our sherry wood, which a portion of that was aged in Oloroso and PX casks. So it's kind of, you had the American Oak, which is the biggest departure from a single malt probably.
Right.
And then sherry wood and peated references to the lineage of single malts. And this one, a couple of years ago, started developing one to have a singular flagship and also make a little bit of space for this beer cask, wine cask.
Okay.
So combine all of those elements minus the PX casks. So it's just that 5 malt grain bill, aged
Okay.
in new oak, a little portion of peat, it's around 12% this vatting. So something that's just very subtle. Sometimes you only get it on the palate on the very end, extends the finish.
Yeah, if you
And-
don't like peat, it probably it doesn't show up enough to actually I think turn you off.
Yeah, it's just a nod to peated and also has some Oloroso casks. So it's something that encompasses all that we're doing. So a majority of the barley grown in Washington, we're using this 5 malt grain bill, which is like big malty grain bill, can stand up to being aged in new oak, and then these references to the past of single malts that people are familiar with.
Yeah, I really like the combination of everything that sort of came together. I think it represents the distillery a lot better than the individual things that were coming out that were sort of like the flag 3 or the core. And it didn't allow you also not to get like Bruichladdich at the beginning where they had so many expressions that it became a C, and then there was just it almost ends up to be like a confusion where you're actually doing these one-offs, but they're actually they're defined one-offs. So you have different editions, as we're going to get to tonight, have different editions of the same sort of idea.
Yeah,
So
it's a fun era to put out, whatever, and keep doing that. But to have one cohesive thing to represent what Westland does, I think flagship is that one.
And this was really too is I don't know if a lot of you know that Westland was really one of the driving forces to get American single malt recognized by the TTB and actually put into, good, bad, or ugly, because I know everybody has an opinion on it. But still, it's one of those type of things that I think we needed that sort of category. And I know Westland was going. We actually had a symposium here about the about that too, with a lot of different people from in the industry talking about what is American single malt.
Yeah,
And, and really, Westland is an American single malt.
that was a big day. It's kind of interesting because it always took a lot of explanation. I mean, even starting off being like, this is an American single malt was somewhat confusing. And now hopefully it's defined a bit as a category. We can say American single malt and maybe people will know where we're starting. And then we can get deep into the details.
Well, I mean, I think by creating that too, you've seen an expansion of that category also, which is very interesting. And you got some. It started out with a small category and a very few amount of players, and all of a sudden you start now getting like the big boys are involved because you created sort of a new category and a new following and some definite interest across the board of whiskey drinkers, not only here in the United States of American single malt, but across the pond and all over the world now.
Yeah, as soon as the big dogs come out with it, you're onto something. They're seeing what you're doing and they're
Right.
starting to play around.
Yeah, so I think that's was an important milestone to sort of hit, and when it finally became, I think there was a lot of celebrating. I can imagine you guys were pretty excited about that, about getting that done, and finally on the books.
Yeah, shout out Steve Hawley for American Single Malt Whiskey Commission.
Yep,
grinding it out all these years, finally got it done.
What do you guys think? Flagship, good. You guys liking it? All right, I do. It's always been the 3-core lineup was always a favorite. I actually, when you simplified it and put it into one expression, I actually liked it better. And it's like a lot of times when you see a big change like that, it's like, they're ruining it, right? They're changing it so much, it's not going to be the same. I think this is and I've said this when this actually came out, I think this is the one time, one of the examples I can remember where actually it fixed a lot of things by doing it this way. So I was really happy that you did that.
Yeah, it's got a great arc to it. too. It's a good way to tell the Westland story, even just, getting on the nose and palate, like
Hmm.
getting meat on the nose, got those brighter fruit ones, which are developed during fermentation. You use a Belgian Saison brewer's yeast,
Yep.
which is fairly unique too. Develop those fruit notes, and then it kind of trends into the maltiness. You get on the palate, the dark chocolate from the casks, and then finishes off that little bit of peated and that slight touch of Oloroso. Yeah.
When you were starting to put this stuff together and started really working on it, though, was there a lot of question about what direction you wanted to get, in, or did you have already sort of a solid feeling where you wanted it to be?
I didn't really, I mean, to be honest, there was a point where I was interested in taking American oak, or what was the structure of American oak, and adding some pale malt that was aged in ex bourbon. And I was wondering, we talked about this the other day, but talking about like creating space in a whiskey with like a lighter profile. And I really wanted it to work. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, you're trying different iterations of it, and then you accept that it doesn't work. And then I was like, well, the finish is like cuts off too quickly. I know peated will extend the finish. I'll start bringing different percentages of that. Palate texture wasn't quite there, so I was like, okay, I think Oloroso, these ones can resolve that, and did a bunch of iterations
Puzzle
of that.
fittings.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I had this in my mind. I was like, okay, if I had American oak and I create like more space in it, like that's interesting to me. It might give like a wider range of fruits that you can get to, but it didn't work, and I was, open to different iterations. So you have to be as a blender.
Yeah, you can't pigeonhole yourself so much that you all of a sudden blind to all the other possibilities that could be.
Yeah, that's sort of like my general process. I'll end up making a bunch of what I call sub blends and then combining them at different ratios before I taste anything. And then I'll taste prototypes and then work backwards, like, oh, this is giving this character, this is giving this character.
You're almost
Um,
doing it. It almost sounds like you're doing sort of like the Japanese model where you're making blends and blending blends.
it's a bit like that. So I found out after that, someone was like asking me, it's like, oh, so you're following this Japanese method, and I hadn't known about it. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Well, like, I'm not surprised about landing on the same thing because it's pretty logical. Like
Right.
within our stocks, we have a ton of different combinations of spirit types and cask types, which is similar to Japan, like blending within
Right.
a single distillery. So it's like if you can, take these pieces and combine them and see what they're like. I believe that they actually batch them together.
Hmm.
All my subblends are done in the lab. I don't make subblends within the stocks.
So everybody sort of understands where that blending process is. It's sort of I always look at it as like a reverse pyramid, where you're sort of taking like making like little pyramids. Like these three go together, and then these two go together, and these four go together, and you're making these other blends, and then you're taking those blends and proportioning them down to the next level, right? Until you basically get at the bottom, you get like one blend, and it's maybe contains pieces of all of these things, but it's not until you put them together in sets to get to your final product. Does that explain it?
Yeah, it also lets you do like quick iterations of it. Like say I have 6 prototypes. They're made up of whatever 12 or so subblends. You can just like combine them in different ratios, taste them as like that subblend is mixed with other things,
Right.
and you can trace what it's actually doing. The whole premise is I don't want to pretend like I know everything. Oh, I can taste it one cast and be like, this is the character it's going to bring. I'd rather taste it in a vatting, see what it's doing,
Right.
and then work from there.
And you sort of know where it's going to. It gives you a better idea of where something's going to go.
Exactly.
So when you're bringing them together, you already know partial answer, but you can sort of see where you can almost vision as you're doing it where it ends up.
Yeah, so I'll start with that pyramid, make prototypes, and then I'll do iterations of like a couple of those prototypes. Like, oh, I like what these are doing. Do different versions until I start narrowing and narrowing in on the profile.
Absolutely, and what the process when you're doing that too, and I think it gets you to what we're tasting right now. It's a very balanced whiskey.
Yeah, that's
So
always I
yeah,
mean, that's always the goal.
I try to explain that to people, like a lot of people, because I always talk about we're in the land of extremes.
Yeah.
You know, it's how much peat can you get into it? How much hops can you get into this beer? How much this? And it's always extremes. Rather than the thing that usually lasts the text of time is what you can do balance wise, because you keep going back and back to it again and again. Because there isn't the extremes to sort of like, because you get a lot of times you get tired of those things.
Yeah, they
Where
can
they balance it, you don't really get tired of anything because there's always something in there.
yeah, a lot of times when things are really big, they grab your attention for a moment, and then it ends up feeling somewhat fleeting.
Right.
But ones that you sit there and you have, a couple drams of or something that's like I mean, people say this idea of drinkability. I was about to say crushability, but
Yeah, I don't want to push them.
It's like
Sessionability.
sessionability. Or this
Sessionability
word
is
is
a
like,
good, yeah.
it's
They all have abilities in them.
yeah, they
Which
have
I
some,
don't have I have no abilities.
exactly,
So
yeah.
that sort of gets where it's
yeah, some kind of ability.
What do you guys think? Do you like the way this sort of ends up? I mean, is anybody not like Pete? Sort of curious. Do you like this one? You don't like Pete, but how does this one? You can still taste it, but is it acceptable to you? Right. It's a piece of the seasoning of it's a part of the whole, rather than just sort of like in your face type thing. All right. Yeah. We got Pete Week. We got you want to only go. We want to go to the extreme. We have a bottle of Pete Week over there, and
Wow, that's a throwback.
That's a throwback one. They'll throw. Everybody's Megazone brought some really cool bottles of Westland for us to try if we want to put in. We're gonna definitely try one of them that has not been around since what do we figure 2012?
To 2013, right?
2013 is when it got filled. It got dumped in 2015.
Yeah, so we're gonna try something throwback tonight for all of you to get to try. All right, so now I have not had the next two.
Nice.
Right.
This is your first tasting?
This is my first tasting of
Nice.
it. I wanted to wait. Figured I'd wait till everybody got here, and that I would try them with you. So these are fairly new.
Yeah, these are brand new. These are batch one
of
both of these. So we talked about flagship sort of expression of a place. Like you have the raw ingredients. You have sort of the influence by the beer culture using these different malts, using that yeast. And then I don't know if anyone's ever been to Seattle, but you can't walk across the street without striding into a brewery. So almost from day one, we had brewers calling us, asking to buy casks. We thought, how about we, instead of just having it be a transactional thing, we'll loan out these casks. So we started our cask exchange program. And just started loaning them out with some stipulations being like, you can make whatever you want, one beer or whatever you want. It has to be a singular project, though. You can't keep refilling it.
Okay.
And you have to return it in one piece. Second part, for some brewers, is hard.
Well, I think that one piece might have been difficult for some brewers.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, did you want these back? We dumped them last month. I was like, well,
not now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could save them, you can rehydrate them and figure it out and see what's what. But most of them are really good partners to work with. We did some small releases called our cask exchange. Most of them were just at the distillery. I think some got out into the market though, with a special different label. Then eventually these started building up these stock of beer casks. I turned around, we have 500 or so. I was like, okay,
all right, now we got to do something else.
Yeah, and I was like, this is the time, and beer cask finish is that. So this one in particular, 5 different beer types, 6 different brewers, all in Seattle, Washington area. Yeah, every drop of this was finished in a beer cask. This one is actually one of our older ones, and we don't put an age on it, but minimum on this is 8 years old. Majority of the spirit in it was our Washington Pale Malt, started in ex-bourbon, and then got finished in different beer types. So probably about 4 years in bourbon casks, another 4 years in beer casks. The remaining 20 some odd percent was that 5 malt grain bill, started in New Oak, and then finished in beer casks for the same sort of even time.
You know what's funny about this one is like I don't think you really like if you nose it so much. I still get a lot of the grain from the malt. All right, that shows up. But when the finish is where the beer is. Like the influence is real. I think of the beer is really on the finish.
Yeah, kind of
mid palate maybe finish.
Yeah, something like that. But when I was setting out and doing different iterations of this, I mean, you're making a beer cask finish, but you don't necessarily want it to taste like a beer.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
So you want to have
it's a balancing act.
Yeah, this structure and like a reference to a beer without being straightforward. Because it was difficult sometimes to deal with the hop character here and there that would come through as soapy. But
this one I think comes together really nice,
really well. Yeah,
like very citrusy. I think the finish comes out very citrusy on this. I like it.
Yeah, as far as this lineup and compared to Flagship 2, a little bit brighter, as these like quick peaks and valleys of different fruit notes, which I really like.
Yeah, I get a lot of fresh fruit off this one. It's like melon and Malagasy, green apple, pear. It's super bright for me.
What do you guys think? Any comments?
Any concerns?
Trying to cut down on beer. What? What's up? Your glass is empty. That is a concern. Yeah. Don't particularly like beer finish, but you do like this one. Okay. I think why that is so is because it doesn't. I think you balanced it well. It doesn't scream beer,
Right.
And a lot of the other ones I've had, and I've had some like especially some of the Irish, which is a lighter style, anyways. The beer character almost takes over, and if you like it, it's great.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think the beer, the finish itself, sort of rules the roost rather than being sort of homogenous, so to speak. It's not an IPA cast, so yeah. I mean, you start getting into like heavily hopped, you start running into issues.
Yeah, I have some
I
one
would
that are,
assume.
yeah, this is kind of like a blending problem right now of trying to figure out, like I have ones that were the hop characters really, really coming through. And so I'm trying to see where it fits. I've done some iterations. I haven't quite wrangled it yet because it does have a really nice nose, but
Yeah.
the palate isn't quite there. We'll figure it out.
Figure it out. Somebody's better start doing some stouts then.
We'll figure it out.
Bring it down to a little bit of a chocolate and coffee rather than having all, but I'm sure, like, is that the scene in sort of out by you? Is that sort of the scene? It's still that sort of like heavy hopped.
Sort of. I mean, a lot of places are like dialing in on making classic lagers now too.
You mean
which is
beer
like-
flavored beer?
Yeah, beer. Exactly.
I love beer flavored beer.
Yeah,
I'm on a kick on
there's
beer
something to say
flavored
when people are dialed in on Pilsner, which is like,
Yeah.
not an easy beer to make.
No, it is not. And not an easy beer to make well. Everybody always thinks of Pilsners as being these like really light, throwaway beers. But if you do them right, they're not.
Yeah, it's
they're
also
actually
like
pretty.
if you make mistakes and flaws really show up in them is the issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, people started doing that. But I mean, yeah, we're on the West Coast. We got Yakima Valley right there. There's a lot of hops being grown there. So
Yeah, that's true.
there's not a shortage of a West Coast IPA.
That is true. Actually, when we had that seminar, Lou Bryson was here talking, and Lou is, I love Lou. Lou's an old friend. And him and I have been on this kick for like the last 10 years of bringing back beer flavored beer. So I'm glad you all start like really starting to understand that's what we actually need. So kudos to everybody out there drinking beer flavored beer. All right, good. I like this one though. This is good.
Yeah.
It's not overly, it's not like, oh my God, it's all beer. It's
malt.
It's malt.
Yeah.
I still you get that maltiness and you get that little brightness and stuff like that. Yeah. Very, very good. All right. So now the next one we have is wine finished.
Yeah, sort of its companion. So these came out at the same time. This is batch one. I'll explain our batch system. So batch one will be around until it's gone. Then batch two comes out, which is a contrast to the Garyana that we'll taste later, which are editions, which come out every year.
Okay.
So as you might guess, Washington also has a world-class wine growing region. In the eastern half,
got to do it all, right? That's
yeah,
you got to bring whiskey up there to just.
This is the thing.
Complete the circle.
Yeah,
complete the circle, right?
I mean, we're just putting the pieces together.
Right.
So it's like we have barley there. We have like the temperate climate that is good for aging single malt. We have a lot of breweries, so we use cask there. We have a lot of wineries. Specifically, this one has like some Syrah in it, some Petit Verdot, some Cab, obviously. And also some of the casks are from Spain, some Tempranillo from Spain.
Okay. You can definitely see it in the color on this one. It does have that sort of reddish. It's not red, but it has a reddish hue. You get into those darker copper characteristics.
Yeah, for sure. And the spirit behind this is a little bit flipped from the beer one. So majority is 5 malt, started in new oak, finished in wine casks, and the rest was pale malt. Some of it's full term, but some of it got started in ex-bourbon, finished in wine casks.
Do you when you start these projects and stuff like that, are you just going through and you have this stuff going? Are you just going in and constantly tasting and sort of seeing where these barrels are at because you're going to have to blend these?
Well, yeah, I mean it depends. Like I don't have like a set schedule for checking on ones. If something's really new, like if it's a new winery or something, like I'll check in on it more. But you learn a lot in the actual blending process. So when I was working on that and coming up with the initial development, obviously I tasted quite a few and got a feel of like the variation between them. And then I'm currently working on batch 3, because I work far ahead of what actually
because
comes
you have
out.
to have it ready for when it's when the time comes, it must be ready.
Yeah, so I
Right.
usually take that time to go through it as opposed to like taking individual samples at some time to keep
Are
track
you
of it.
how many barrels of each type of wine are you putting away, or you're not? Are you finishing them in the wine, or are you storing them?
So most of it's finished.
Okay.
We had some that were full term maturation. A lot of the Tempranillo ones were full term.
Okay.
But like batches at a time, we'll get maybe 80 to 100 or so
Okay.
at a time and fill them
Yeah.
and finish them.
What do you guys think of the wine one? Right, all of a sudden becomes very rich. Right, I get like, you get these deeper sort of fruit notes into this one too. You definitely get
Cherry
red berry,
cordials.
cherry. Yeah, little cherry cordial. I can see that.
Yeah, I want to have a real structural contrast between these. Like the beer one has these little, like I said before, little peaks and valleys, dips, and holds your attention this way, where the wine cast washes over you a little bit more. It's a little bit more full on.
Right.
So I wanted to have those big structural differences for the two that were coming out at the same time.
I think you achieved that.
Yeah, because you'd think they'd be different on their own, but you can blend them so they'd be a little bit more narrow and similar.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever put the wine cast and the beer cast together?
You can now. Experimentation.
Yeah, experimentation. No, like guys. All of a sudden they went, no, yes. Why not?
What's your ratio?
Oh, it's 50-50 right now. You got to always do 50-50. You can't screw around any other way. No,
Yeah,
it was.
yeah.
Trust me, I get it. Listen, steady as a rock. Unfortunately, this is the hand I shoot with. Actually, not that bad at a 50-50 ratio.
You landed on something. We'll see. We'll do a crossover.
Not bad. What are the ABVs on these? And we didn't get into that. What do you think?
Oh yeah, first three are 46%. Non-chill filtered, no coloring added.
Magic number.
Magic number, yeah, magic number. It gives that real nice texture, and obviously you don't get that chill haze on the shelf.
Yeah, you don't get that. So everybody understands that 92 is sort of that where the fatty chain sort of stay in suspension. Pretty much, you'd have to really get it cold for them to start popping at 46 or 92 proof, and then you don't have to do pretty much anything else to the whiskey as far as filtration.
Yeah,
Go through a big filter, just pull out the big chunks and move on.
It's just a basic particle filter.
Yeah,
Nothing fancy.
okay, really good. I like that one. All right. Now we start heading in. Now we're heading into sort of like now the additions come.
Yeah, now the additions come.
Okay. So what do we got first here?
So we got Gary on. I've been talking about this whole time. Like, we're trying to express a place what seems, it's kind of a tired statement sometimes. I mean, a lot of places are saying this, like, oh, we're expressing this place. I like to tick through the evidence of that, brewers, winemakers.
Yeah.
We're lucky enough to have a native species of oak that grows in a pretty thin band from southern BC, Canada, down to northern California. It's called Quercus garryana. Thus the name Garryana. Quercus alba is your standard white American oak that grows on the whole eastern half of the U.S. And so this is a tree that's not, we don't have a big stand that we're harvesting from to make casts. So a lot of these are down trees or they're coming down for some other reason. Sort of like getting them.
So you're not going to get a lot of casts anyways.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of not real. You're not really. You guys replant, I'm sure, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things where you're going in. Okay, we need to make this many barrels, so let's start cutting all these trees down.
Exactly. Yeah, it's inherently a limited supply.
Right.
It's illegal to cut them down, right?
So they're protected in some counties. It's not illegal. Like you're not getting dragged off to jail. I think if you cut one down on your property, but in some counties, yes, it's protected. In other ones, it's not.
So you have to be careful, and there's probably enough to supply what you're doing because you are doing it in small amounts.
Yeah.
To go that route.
Yeah,
anyways.
we have a steady supply, but it's not. If we wanted to like make it,
If you wanted to blow it up, it'd be almost a
gigantic vatting. Yeah,
Right.
we wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't do it. All right.
But yeah,
We've had some of the Garryanas when they first came out too, which was really nice.
Yeah, the early ones. Yeah. So It's not 100% aged in Gary oak. This one in particular is around 40%. Because part of the Garyana release is seeing how it behaves and how it mixes with other casks and plays against them.
Okay.
Because when you have it on its own, it doesn't bring much sweetness to the table. It has a really concentrated spice note. I constantly say this, and I was saying that. Let me just say, I was saying this before the movie came out, but I always reference Dune when I'm referencing this. It's the spice. It's hard to put your finger on, but it's got a lot of power, and it might make you time travel.
Last time I had this, I lost 2 days, so I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, but like if you had to put a word to it, it's a really concentrated clove note will come through. But there's also variability from different casks because these are coming from slightly different areas, but also been air dried for a different amount of time.
Okay.
And so it's got a big.
And you're doing most of these are air dried; they're not kiln dried, which does make it sort of a difference over the long haul.
Yeah, we don't have any of our new ones. None of them are kiln dried anymore. Early days, like in the up to I think cask like 200 or something like that, we were using kiln dried, but there was a tipping point where the oak was just taking over too much. Had a little bit of a panic, put them into ex-bourbon, and then looked into getting air dried, 18 months, 24 months air dried staves.
Sort of bleed out some of those tannins and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. For anyone who doesn't know, that breaks down. There's a fungus that breaks down some of the tannins in the wood when you sit it out in the air, thus air drying.
And they are drying, right? And you're just putting them out there, and you're letting them, like the staves, just deal with the elements. So the rain, the sun, everything, the wind, dryness, wetness. It's all getting it done, and it's just actually seasoning the wood, but it's pulling out all like a lot of compounds that you sort of don't want out of the wood. And you get some of that in kiln drying, but you don't get it all because it's not a long enough process to sort of.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
always talk about you can't cheat time.
Yeah.
You can't cheat time. No matter how much you try. There's always a
we'll figure it out.
There's always a bill to pay.
Sure. Yeah, so this is the 9th edition of Garyana. I had to reference it. Oh, sorry. So this one is 50% ABV. So a little bit higher than the first 3. 9th edition, so the one that came right before this, the 8th edition, got 2023, got number 3 on Whiskey Advocates, most exciting whiskeys. I tried to say best whiskeys because the list says most exciting.
There you go.
So you just got to be real excited.
On that
Is
note,
it the best one? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Winecast last year as well was in the top 20.
Of the excited or best?
Most exciting.
Most exciting. It's Whiskey Advocates top 20 list.
All right.
But technically it's the most exciting.
Whatever floats your boat.
So this one, I'm playing the Gary Oak character off of Full Term Oloroso Butts.
Okay.
Which is a little bit of a commentary on 8 because 8 was more focused on Full Term Maturation PX Butts.
Okay.
So it's kind of playing these two worlds of sherry.
For those of you who know, Shane likes big butts and he cannot lie. Those are like the sherry. It's a much bigger barrel. What's the
so they're about 500 liters.
500 liters rather than being like
200.
Yeah.
So 200 is like the standard cask. 53-gallon cask is a barrel.
Liter, right?
It's, about 200 liters.
So you can definitely you can smell that influence in this one, and it plays very nicely with that sort of the spice of life there.
Yeah, the spice, the melange.
It's really nice. This one here has I think I like this one a lot because I think it really has a huge depth of flavor. Coming off there, it's definitely like what I like to call a thinking person's whiskey. The more you this is why it time travels, because the more the more you drink, the more flavors that are popping.
For sure.
So I can see where you could lose a day.
Yeah, the Garyana especially develops in the glass.
Yeah,
like so much you just let it sit there, and I mean, a lot of whiskeys will change as they sit there, but for some reason, Gary Oak in particular really develops in the glass and rewards patience.
Nice, I like that one. All right, so what's the next one we got?
Final one is Solum. This is the first edition of Solum, which has been out for a bit. So we're working through this lineup. We're talking about how we're expressing a place. This one is made with locally grown Washington barley, peated with Washington peat. If anyone's curious where the peat bog is, just Google peat bog Washington. on Google Maps. And
It's got a fancy name, huh?
this is where it is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of peat bogs in Washington. A lot of them are protected wetlands.
Mhm.
This one was grandfathered through for.
Just so you know, the peat person may not like this one as quite as much.
This one's also fairly lightly peated too.
It is too. It is not that.
It's also American peat versus, say, your
Yes,
Scottish
exactly.
style peat. They're very different.
Yeah, so something that's heavily peated, the barley would be around 55 or so ppm, unless you're Octomore, and then I think it's close to 1 million ppm or something like that.
I'm sorry, sir. It's 2 million.
So this one is really lightly peated, somewhere between 8 and 12 ppm. We work with Skagit Valley malting. So
Okay.
Skagit Valley is where our rack houses are now. And we also work with farmers there. Some barley, some majority of the barley comes from Eastern Washington, but on Western Washington in the Skagit Valley, they're growing barley as a rotation crop.
Okay.
So Skagit Valley malting started there to use that as use the barley for malting, bring some more value to the farmers is sort of how they started. Then we're like, hey, why not you get some Washington peat? We'll see what we can do.
Well, the Washington peat is sort of a weird story, right? Because there's not many peat bogs that you can pull peat out of.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, most peat bogs are wetlands.
Yep.
They're protected. This one was grandfathered in. So the story goes that the military was using it as a chemical absorbent. So it got grandfathered in for industrial use.
It was used on the ships when it pick up whatever diesel or something.
Yeah. So a spill, on
Yeah,
runways.
spilled,
So
yeah.
it's a really good absorbent.
Right.
So
Kind of an interesting story of all of a sudden, why would we have this one peat bog that was not protected like every other peat bog was? It's because the military supersedes the environment. Sorry, but as a result, we get to sort of play around with it a little bit.
yeah, so
too.
this isn't your classic. If you go to Scotland, they have, it's all drained and they're cutting out
Yeah.
in bricks. This is just a big, bog, an actual bog that they dredge out a bit, dry it. For a minute, they were pelletizing it. It's interesting. So Skagit Valley malting, they don't do the classic malting process where it's like a 7-step process where you'd move the barley through each step. They have these self-contained drums where they do every step. So the premise is they can have ultimate control over malting, so you could potentially malt different varieties that don't follow that classic
Okay.
7-day schedule. But because of that, you have to figure out, you're reinventing the wheel a lot. So they have their little smoker next to it. They're putting peat into that and recirculating it into this big drum, which is funny because you think about the process in Scotland or how it was back in the day. Very simple,
Right.
A big stack,
Yep.
put in smoldering peat, done.
Done.
But these guys are like, okay, how do we hook
How
this
do we
up?
do this? Yes, the ancient knowledge has been lost,
Yeah.
but we need to reinvent it. So that's cool. All right, what do you guys think? You gonna put it out? Yeah. Do you like this a lot? Yeah. You guys take one of those. You want to give me that?
Yeah, so the challenge to blending Solum was combining, the novel with the familiar.
Yep.
So this one in particular is 2 different lots, one from 2016, one from 2019. The one from 2016 is heavy on the unique spectrum. So it's it literally smells like a bog,
Okay.
but it doesn't have the classic smoke notes. 2019 is bringing in more of that familiar smoke note. So it's kind of similar to Flagship where you're nodding to the past, but also, oh, here's some new character.
Embracing the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And guys like that one? That's a good one. All right. Good. I'm glad you like it. Now we have something a little different, and with going and jumping in the Wayback Machine here. This is cast number 617. This was actually done for was picked for Massachusetts. I don't know why. Can't figure that one out.
Yeah, it's hard.
617. But anyways, you want to tell us? You had to look this one up. You want to come? This one is 53.7, 107.4 proof. I can tell you the release date was summer 2016.
2016, yeah.
2016.
Yeah, so originally filled, I got my notes right here. I had to,
You got to look that one up.
I had to search my.
That goes way back.
Yeah. So this is originally filled in 2013, released in 2016. It's that 5-malt grain bill that I keep talking about, aged in our Cooper Select cask, which Cooper Select is the staves that are air dried for 18 months and has a lighter toast, heavier char on it.
Now, don't ask me to get into this. This is actually, like they say, Lock and Key Society is a whiskey club, and very, very nicely donated for us this evening for you guys to try. For Megazone over here, give Megazone a big hand on this one. We don't see many of these still around. So.
Yeah, that takes me back. It's like I remember filling out all these labels and putting them on.
Yeah, those are all done by hand.
Putting them on by hand. Yeah.
So Shane, there's no pale malt in this.
No, this is 100%.
No, I think it's 100%.
So when you're talking earlier about creating space, this is tight.
This is pretty condensed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a single cast. It's meant to be a singular expression.
Right.
It's just a piece of the puzzle.
Whenever you're doing single cask, I mean, you do it because there's something there that you're not going to find everywhere else. It's a one-off. It's not really looking to be repeated. That type of thing is, and it's so good. Let's just bottle it the way it is and see how it goes. And that's sort of the thing, rather than what you do on a daily basis is like, okay, I get all these casks, now I got to make something really cool out of all these things. And, for consistency or for variations as we go down expressions or additions. But this is just always going to be a single cask is you don't really do a ton of those anymore anyways, do you?
I mean, I'm always picking single casts. Like
yeah.
I have a whole file of just like, here's my single cask eligible, and then
Shane for single cask.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You can talk after this, Ryan.
Direct
All
me
right,
to the
let's talk
source.
after this one. 508 413.
These are low numbers.
No one cared.
Maybe a
Yeah,
higher
but they don't
number.
even care. It's like, yeah, whatever. It's Western. There be dragons out there. But there are. See, I told you. But what do you guys think? Good. You like that? Yeah. It's always nice to. A lot of times, it's nice to try these things, and at least you've had them at this point too, which is always
it's a
nice
good.
to
I mean,
show.
single casts are a nice peek behind the curtain to like what I'm getting at. So like, there's some character from the 617 that kind of shows up in the flagship.
Yeah, you get.
So
There's
it's
a
like,
definite DNA, through all of these. There's a definite. There's. It's very Westland, and I think you've done a good job of sort of securing place. By putting it in. So there is a definite, distillery characteristic that sort of banded, and not by accident either. So
no, not at all. I mean, the through line with everything is that saison brewer's yeast.
Yeah,
it's kind of unique.
Yep.
I mean, obviously the 5 malt grain bill showed up in a lot of different things, but like it develops this like really unique fruit note, especially during aging too. It's like there is this. And I talked about a tipping point with.
Hold on 1 second, guys.
I talked about a tipping point with like these kiln dried ones where the oak was taking over. There is an interesting thing that happens even with like this Cooper Select. This is a 3-year-old one. It's like on the younger side. Doesn't taste young, but it's on the younger side. But there is a point like when they hit 5 years old that fruit character really starts to develop again, which I think is kind of interesting thing about aging. Because everyone always in their head is like, oh, the cask keeps taking over, but it's not necessarily true. There is a balancing act that goes on.
That's right.
And a cascade of reactions that develop more fruit notes as it's aging.
That's really cool. And then, by the way, like you said, this is a 3-year-old, and everybody, these days poo-poos something that's not, at least 5 or 6. And you can get a lot of great character. There's no graininess in this at all. It's a really good representation of what it's supposed to be, and it tastes complete. It doesn't taste young. It tastes complete.
Like you put all that work in up front to develop that flavor, and something that can stand up to new oak, then you get something that's perfectly mature at this age.
Well, listen, Shane, I want to thank you very much
for
coming
having
here.
Me.
I'll also thank Jason too. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
All right, we got a couple more things to go through. You guys stay here. I want to say bye to everybody on Facebook and, of course, our podcast. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it out there in the interwebs. But remember, you should have been here. It was awesome. So we'll see you later.